Hello friends, in this video we are going to look at Java AWT radio buttons and the item event. The example here is in this video we will create two radio button groups. Then we will show you how to handle the item event. So by handling the item event and item listener using the item listener, we can say which radio button is clicked by the user and the radio button's state, whether the radio button is checked or unchecked. So the prerequisite for this video is you have to learn how to create a frame window. So here we are not going to create the frame window, we will use the already created frame window. So the playlist is a 04 Java AWT and the video is the very first video. So after you watch this video you can come and watch this one, or if you know how to create a frame window you can skip watching that video and directly proceed with the next step. So previously we looked at checkbox in the previous video and how to create a checkbox. Java AWT provides a class called CheckboxGroup. Using this checkbox group, we can group checkboxes together. When the checkboxes are grouped, they appear as radio buttons. Below are the sample radio buttons. So here you can see two radio buttons, one is a male and another one is a female. So at present the radio button male is selected. Here the radio button male is in a selected state and female is not selected. So the radio button appear as a circle. So previously we saw a checkbox which appeared as a square shaped window. Here it is a circle window. These two radio buttons are actually the checkbox instances, but they are grouped using the AWT checkbox group. So once the checkboxes are grouped under a checkbox group, the appearance of a checkbox goes as a radio button. So in the above screenshot you can see how a radio button look like. Unlike checkboxes, the user can check only one radio button in a group. So let us say that this gender type is a radio button group, and let's say that both the checkboxes male and female is grouped in a single group called checkbox group, and the group name is let us say the sex or gender. So here in this group, since the two checkboxes are grouped, you can select only one radio button here. So once you select a radio button, the other radio button get deselected. For example, we select radio button, female radio button above. That means the currently selected radio button is male. If you select female radio button here, the male radio button get unselected and female will get selected. So if it were a checkbox, when you click the female will get checked and there will be check mark in male also. But here when we are using it under a checkbox group, they are treated as a radio button. So when you select female, the check mark in male will get automatically removed and a new check mark will be placed in the female radio button. So that's how the radio button works. Only one radio button will be in a checked state in a group. So let's look about the example which we are going to create here to study the radio buttons. So in this frame window we will create two labels. First label tells that the radio button group is for gender. The other radio button tells the group is for age group. So then we create two set of checkboxes. In the first group, we create 3 checkboxes and we will group it, and we will call that as a radio group 1 or the sex group or the gender group. The second one is the radio group 2, and that one is age group. So this group contains 4 checkboxes. Since it is grouped under a different group, the checkboxes will be treated as a radio button. In summary, here we have 2 radio button groups. And since we have 2 radio button groups, we can select 2 items as 2 items in a checked state. That means in the first radio group we can select 1 item, and in the second radio group we can keep 1 item as selected. So totally we can keep 2 items as selected here in this example, since we have 2 groups. Next we have 2 text box, or in Java they are called as a text field. So we have 2 AWT text field here. The first AWT text field tells which radio button is selected from group 1, and the second text field tells which radio button is selected from the second radio button group. Alright, so as part of the first step, we will see how to create the controls here for this example. So we declare checkbox group as a class member as well as a 2 text field as a class member. Why? Because after when we handle the event produced by the checkbox or checkbox group, or we can call it as a radio group, we will handle the item event, and inside the handler for the item event we need the checkbox groups to know the selected checkbox, and we need these 2 text field to report which group box, which radio button is selected. So that's why we are declaring it as class members. After that, what we do, we create 2 labels. We already saw that. After creating those 2 labels, we create a 2 text field with a width of 50. That means it's a character width. It can hold 50 characters. After this, here we create our checkbox group. So the class name is checkbox group, which comes from java.awt package, and this is the class instance we use to group our checkboxes. So there are 2 groups we are creating. One is for defining the sex and another one is for defining the age range. Here, if you see here, we are actually creating the checkbox instances. So the constructor accepts 3 parameters here. The first parameter, for example, let us take the very first checkbox instance here. The first parameter passed here is male, so that one acts as a label. Next, we specify the state of that checkbox, whether it is checked or unchecked. So we are passing true to that. Next, we pass the checkbox group name. So in the previous slide, if you see, we created a 2 checkbox group, right? So here we are passing the chkg, that means the checkbox group 6. So for all 3 checkboxes, we pass this group name. That means we are grouping all these 3 checkboxes, that means male, female and others, under the chk G6 group box. Alright, so now we grouped these three checkboxes under one checkbox group named sex. Next, we create other set of checkboxes, and this time we group it under age range checkbox group. So now we have 7 checkboxes, in which the first 3 checkboxes is grouped under sex, and the second 4 checkboxes grouped under age range. So totally we have 2 radio group. So once the checkboxes are added to a group, they become radio buttons. So these are all actually the checkbox instances, but visually it will appear as radio buttons. So there will be totally 7 radio buttons, and there are 2 groups under which these 7 radio buttons are grouped. Now we have 2 radio group. So all the components are ready. Now we need to add it to the frame window. So here we are making a sequence of odd call to add all these components to the frame window. Alright, now let us see how it works in our Eclipse. So at class level, we add our declaration. That's the first step. Then we will import the required packages. Next, in the frame window constructor, we create our label and text field. So here is label 1 and here is label 2, and there are 2 text fields. After creating the checkboxes, after creating the labels and the text field, we create a 2 checkbox group. So the first one is for first radio group, and the second one is for the age range radio group. So now the checkbox group is ready. We will create our 2 set of radio groups by creating the instance of checkbox and adding it to these 2 groups. So if you see here, alright, first we will import the checkbox. If you see here, chk6, there are 3 checkbox instances. So 1, 2 and 3, and it is grouped under our chk6 group box. Next, we create a age range. That's a kids, teen, matured and experienced. So these checkboxes we group under the age group checkbox group. So there are 2 radio group now. Finally, in the constructor, we add all these components. Alright, now we are adding all these components to our frame window. So this is our frame window. We are adding all these components to the frame window. Now we will perform a run and see how it looks. Alright, now all the controls are displayed, and if you see, once I select female, the check mark in male will automatically get unchecked, and if I click others, the check mark from female will be removed. So this way you can select only one checkbox. So that's why we call it as a radio button. Since it's a radio button, and these three radio buttons are in single group, one group, so only one can be selected within this group. So since this edge group is a second group, we can select one among this. So there are four radio buttons in this group. That means you can select any one of the edge group here. Alright, now this is working, but we need to handle the event from this radio button to tell which radio button is clicked by the user and which one is actually checked. So the first one will report which checkbox is checked here in the first group, and the second one will report which edge group is selected by the user. Alright, so in the previous step we added all the control to the frame window and we displayed the frame window. So you also saw how the radio button works. Since we have a two radio button group, we left two radio button in a checked state since there are two group. Alright, now we will handle the item listener. In the previous video, we already implemented the item listener. So we can directly go to Eclipse and create a handler method for this item listener. So to create the item listener, we have to implement item listener, then click here and state import item listener from java.awt.event package. Next, click on this margin area and select add unimplemented methods. So here is the method signature. This is where we are going to handle the click event of those radio buttons. Now we will handle the item event in the itemStateChanged method override of item listener. So here is the implementation for itemStateChanged. Here we are making use of our checkbox group and we are making call to get selected checkbox method. This get selected checkbox method will tell which radio button was selected by the user in a group. So that's why we use this method in two instances of our checkbox group. First, we used the checkbox group for the sex, and second, we used the checkbox group for the age range. So the method actually will return the checkbox instance. So we typecasted it and we stored the reference. Next, we used the item event and we made a call to get state change method. The get state change method will return an integer constant and we are comparing that with the predefined constant in the item event. So here we are using the constant selected and we are making the comparison. So the item event will tell the state of the what is the current state change. So based on the if condition, we populated our text box 1 stating which radio button is selected from first group. Similarly, in the text box group 2, we say which radio button is selected from the second radio box group. So the getLabel method will returns the radio button caption. Then based on the constant value checked, we are saying whether it is selected or unselected. So remember, after implementing this item state changed, we have to register all our checkboxes with the listener. Okay, here is the method overridden in the previous step. So as you saw in the slide, we just implemented this method. Here we are using our first checkbox group, and here we are using our second checkbox group. So this tells which checkbox is selected. The method getSelected checkbox tells which checkbox method is selected. Okay, so here the getSelected checkbox tells which checkbox is currently selected. So that we stored here. After that, we used the ItemEvent also. The getStateChanged tells what is the state of the checkbox. So using that, we said whether it is selected or unselected. Alright, so we implemented the itemStateChanged handler. Now we should register all 7 checkboxes. So there are 7 checkboxes, right? 4 from the second group and 3 from the first group. So we need to register all these 7. With the event listener. So our frame window implements ItemListener. So here we are making call to add ItemListener for all of our 7 checkboxes, and we are passing the listener. This is the frame window current instance. Since it implements ItemListener, we satisfy the signature of this method. So if you see, it accepts an ItemListener. Alright, now we will run and see how it works. So it states that female is selected and teen is also selected. If I click others, it will say which one is selected in the first group. Male is selected. Similarly, mature is selected and experienced is selected from the second group. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.